Welcome to the Professional Women's Meetup podcast, where we dive into the stories, strategies, and successes of women who are making their mark in the business world. Today, we're thrilled to have Liz Jakoi, a seasoned expert in corporate training and coaching, who has transitioned her over 20 years of experience into empowering leaders and entrepreneurs to achieve exponential growth and transformation by focusing on changing habits. Liz, such a pleasure to have you on today on the show.
Hi, Christine. Yeah, it's such a pleasure always to be on your podcast. I know we were about a year ago, and I'm back
Yep.
today. So thank you, and
Yeah.
thank you for providing this
Oh,
opportunity and
thank you.
platform for us.
It's such an honor to have you on here for the second time. And for those of you who don't already know Liz, she's been part of the Professional Women's Meetup since the beginning. She's one of our founding members, VIP members with the group, and I'm just so excited to dive in. So let's get started with this interview. So Liz, could you start by giving us a brief introduction to what your current role is and your business?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I will keep it brief because we'll talk more about, what I do later on. But
Yeah.
definitely, I've always been fascinated by the inner workings of the human mind. And it could very well be because I had to understand as a child what was going on with my parents. Leaving a war-torn country, leaving hungry during a revolution, arriving to another country, sort of being uprooted and having to learn a new language. They couldn't use their skills that they were using they were trained to do in their careers because language and all those same sort of trials and tribulations that a lot of immigrants are facing today as well. But I guess I was born about a year later, and so they were very stressed. They had PTSD. So I guess that's why I became very intrigued about the human mind. And I always believed that we have the capacity to grow and develop our full potential. And that's why I went into HR first, right? Because I believe that that's what we do. We have to grow and develop our human resources in order for our profits and our companies to grow and expand. And then I realized that I really that wasn't really my passion. So that's when I moved into training and development. I was a career coach and employment coach. And then about 15 years ago, I with my kids, we went to see a counselor and we were diagnosed with ADD. And that sort of started a lot of my research and studying into more of the mental processes and why we do what we do. And so that's why I became very excited about mental fitness, as well as how important it is to have that emotional resiliency. Because I see my parents have, they wouldn't admit to having PTSD and depression and all those things because it just 50 years ago it just wasn't accepted, right? And we have changed so much in the last 10, 15 years as well in terms of neuroplasticity and understanding the inner workings of the neurology of the mind. And so many things have changed. And that's why I'm really excited and passionate and really want to help people to recognize they don't have to suffer. There's that they
Yeah.
can live with ease and flow. They can work less and accomplish more.
Absolutely, absolutely. And definitely mental fitness is a concept that we're hearing more about lately. So can you explain what it means to you and why it's important?
Absolutely. Well, I guess through my own challenges and experiences with emotional, like really highs and really lows, and
Mhm.
starting to sort of study and look at it. And I recognize that it's just as important as physical fitness, right? Applying the
Mhm.
same tool that athletes and high business performing professionals use. And I started applying it to myself. So I started to think about our physical fitness is really about having the physical stamina to perform, to endure, and then really to be able to, we do that because we want to manage our stress. But we also want to manage disease and fatigue, right? So that we can be more energized, so we can fight off our immune system. And
Mhm.
similarly, we tend to forget that the mind can also help us to prevent dis-ease, because when we're stressed and anxious, we're diseased, right? We're not at ease. And so I started to look at that. So if we can perform and endure life's challenges, especially
Mhm.
yourself with kids around, right? Sometimes the world can be very chaotic, but respond
Mhm.
to it in a more positive mindset rather than a negative one. And it's really about strengthening the mind to become resilient. In the same way our physical workouts strengthen our body. So it's really about having that mental stamina.
I love it.
I
I
can give an
love it.
example if you want. Yeah.
Yeah, go right ahead. That was so good. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. So go give us an example. I love it.
Yeah, it's kind of like, when you weight train and you know yourself you weight train. So tell me a little bit about that when you're targeting your muscles. When you remember when you first started weight training, what did you do?
Yeah, the muscles definitely take a it takes a hit right at the beginning because your body not used to it, right?
Right? Yeah, and you probably started with using small weights or light weights at first and
Yes, start
repetitions,
light. Yes.
light, and then
Yeah.
sets, right?
Mhm.
That's the same way I look at it because I'm sure by now. And how long have you been doing that?
I have been maybe on this journey with weights for about a year now, going on a year.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's taken you probably a year to feel stronger,
Yeah,
healthier, lose
absolutely. Now
weight,
I'm lifting the 10 pounds like I was at when I first started, maybe around 4 or 5, and that was a lot, but now I'm at 10 and it's easy.
right? It's getting easier. But now you
Yeah.
want what you want to do to even strengthen yourself and to endure and develop more resilience and more endurance is you're probably going to start lifting heavy weights, maybe. I don't know, right? But that's the same
Yep.
thing with the mental fitness. There's three areas of our brain, and I use various tools and technique to target and strengthen our mind. So for example, and I think you and I went over this, there's 10 saboteurs, 10 sabotage
Mhm.
patterns. Remember I sent you that assessment to help you identify, and that was kind of neat. There's 10
Yeah.
sabotage patterns that we have. Well, what I do is I do that with a lot of people. I'll send them that tool, and that's what I'll coach them on to strengthen. We'll start with one and strengthen that, and then we'll start with the next one. But there's the three muscles that I'm talking about is once you identify what your sabotage patterns are, it just takes 5 minutes, then we interrupt that area of the brain. So I'll give you tools on learning how to interrupt that sabotage area. Then I get my clients to develop sensing activities to quiet the sabotage brain. It's really mindfulness meditation techniques, but there's different ones. And then
Mhm.
what we want to do is activate the superconscious area of our brain. Now, some people refer to the superconsciousness as the higher self. Some people pray and use God and Jesus. I like to call it superconscious because I believe in source and universe. So that's what I like to tap into. And that way I
Mhm.
can deal with business, life, challenges in a much more calmer and relaxed manner. So that's where, when you're accessing your higher self or your superconscious, you're really being more empathetic, not only towards yourself, but to others. You become more curious, you become more creative. And then, of course, you can, even though chaos is going around you and you're being challenged, which sometimes, stress is a good thing because it challenges you to perform better. So it can be looked
Mhm.
at as negative and a positive. It can be both. But that way you
Yep.
can take clear headed action.
Mhm. I love that. And you've mentioned the trifecta framework. So could you tell us more about that and how it helps individuals and businesses?
Absolutely. So I guess over the years, having studied with Tony Robbins, Brendan Burchard, Dr. Joe Dispenza, Chris Duncan, David Bayer, just to mention a few coaches that I've hired, I've used a lot of their frameworks. And as I was learning and incorporating them into mine, I realized that there was something missing. And so from those missing pieces, that's what I put together in a 3-step framework. And I call it trifecta. because you have to have all three in order to make the lasting changes that you need to make. So, for example, I kind of liken it to a horse race. Have you ever watched a horse race or even a 100-yard dash? There's always three winners, right? There's the
Mhm.
first place, second place, and the third place. And sometimes, especially in horse races as well, you'll see that the horse, the gold medal winner in the 100-yard race, really wins by a foot, a chest. You know how they pump their chests across the line? Or,
Yes.
the horse wins by a nose.
Mhm.
Now, are they are they are they smarter? The one who wins, are they smarter? Do you think they're
Ah,
smarter?
I don't think so. It would depend on those 3 areas, right?
Right. Yeah. So they're not
That's my
necessarily
guess.
smarter. It's a great guess. It's a great segue into me telling you about the three areas. So they're using what they have just to dig deeper, maybe that 10% deeper, because they see that other person coming up behind them just to give it that extra little push to cross that finish line. And that's why I
Mhm.
call it the trifecta factor. It's kind of like using these three things. So it's thinking, changing it, and then acting, which is what I call think it, change it, live it. So it's kind of three
Oh,
principles, right? So it's kind of like having these hurdles and blocks in front of you, and you have to jump over the hurdles to keep going towards, the finish line. Maybe you
yes.
dream the end result that you want. So there's
Mhm.
three areas of the brain that we encounter when we reach that hurdle. So at first,
Mhm.
you don't know what it is. Well, here's this hurdle. I know I'm stressed. I know I'm anxious. I know I'm overwhelmed, maybe a little depressed. My mind is scattered. Maybe I'm avoiding things. I'm a perfectionist. Like you kind of don't know how to get over that hurdle. Well, I help you
Yeah.
identify and sort of teach you why that's happening so I can take the guesswork out of it. And so what we tend to do, let's say for avoidance, is we tend to go around the hurdle, right? And then the next hurdle comes up and we go around it. We try and keep going. But if you did
Mhm.
that in an actual race, you'd get disqualified, right? You're supposed
That's
to go
true.
over the hurdle,
Yeah.
right? Sorry,
Yeah.
you get disqualified, right? Did you have something
Mhm.
you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, exactly. No, that makes sense, and it's about that making those changes that collectively lead to that transformation, right?
Exactly. So I get you to think about it, it's what I call the power of metacognition,
Mhm.
because, especially if you're an overthinker, if you recognize, sort of step back and observe your thinking, that's when you can make the changes to your thinking. So it's think it, and then you can change it, and then you can take action to start jumping over the hurdle. Now, the first time, you might knock that hurdle over because, in a real race, you're not supposed to, right?
Mhm.
Because well, you can, but it slows down your progress to the end result, right? So it's kind of, you may hit your knee a few times going over that first hurdle, and that's okay. But that's the same thing with physical fitness, right? We've got to keep doing those reps. Like you started with the 5 pound weight,
Yeah,
you've got to keep doing those reps daily and those
yeah.
sets so that eventually you can increase the weight. And now I bet you if you go back and lift that 5 pound weight, it's like, why did I think this was so heavy? Right? It's the
Yeah.
same thing with the trifecta framework. I get you to think it, using these tools, change it, use that various tools, and then live it, meaning apply it in the real world so that you can learn from it, give yourself feedback. And if you need to make adjustments, you can. That's the same thing with physical training, right? You kind of think about what you're going to do, you do it, you change the weights, you change the routine, you change the sets, you change the reps, and then you're doing it in real life. But then you kind of look back and say, oh my, these biceps are really doing well, but maybe I should start working on my triceps a little better. That's the same thing with what I do when it comes to mental fitness.
That makes so much sense. Okay, so then now we have mental fitness and we have the trifecta, framework. So how do the 2 tie together? I
Well,
guess you
how
kinda
they
talked
tie
about that
together.
already. Yeah.
Sorry?
So how does mental fitness tie into the trifecta framework?
Right. It's using the various tools, getting you to think about what it is you're doing. And just like athletes, they think about that hurdle. They think about the race, but they start imagining it. So I give you various tools to start
Mhm.
imagining so that you can rewire your brain to that new identity. So that's the
Mhm.
change it part. And then you start living it in terms of you start acting in ways towards your new identity. And the only reason that we don't is because we get pulled back to our old identity because of subconscious patterns. So the
Mhm.
sabotage patterns that I give you and show you how it works really helps you understand and have those aha moments that you can recode and rewire into the new identity. The only reason you go back to your old habits is because of subconscious patterns. So that's what we want to do. We want to, once we become conscious of those conscious patterns, it's kind of like shining a light on it. You shine a light on the darkness, it illuminates it and it disappears like a vampire,
Yeah.
right? You shine the vampire goes out in sunlight. It's not very good for them, right? So same sort of concept here. So it's making those
Yeah.
2 millimeter shifts. Yeah.
Exactly, and I feel like the mental fitness is really the foundation of the trifecta, framework, and it's like pieces of a puzzle you're putting together with, your habits and your actions, right? And it just creates that solid base that we're looking for in terms of, our results and where we want to, um ultimately be in our wherever it is. I guess each individual would be different in terms of how they and I got the opportunity to do the what
The
is it called
assessment.
again? That
It's positive intelligence assessment. Yeah.
yeah,
The
yeah.
sabotage.
So
Yeah.
that's really, really interesting. I found that super interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Helps you
Okay.
identify. Actually, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So can you share an example of how mental fitness has helped one of your clients specifically achieve their business goals?
Mm. Actually, that's a great, yeah, just taking a moment because there's several. I thought, which one should I use here? Oh, there was
Yeah.
one lady I helped to be. There was a lady who came to me. She's a VP in HR, and it was actually at the start of COVID, which was interesting. She thought it was COVID. See, once again, this is what we do. We tend to judge the situation and circumstance as the cause of our stress and anxiety, depression. So we thought it was COVID that was creating a lot of mental challenges for her, and she just seemed like she was unraveling, um, breaking down. She was burned out. She felt like she was having, meltdowns. And so when I started to dig deeper, we uncovered patterns, her sabotage patterns. And of course, I also start to dig deeper and find out when exactly, if she really thought about it, when exactly did a lot of this happen? And as it turns out, it started about 3, 4 years before COVID. See, that's the problem is sometimes people think that it's a situation like COVID or post-COVID, which a lot of people are
Mhm.
experiencing now.
Yeah.
But it's really often thought the judge, the way we beat ourselves up, the judge has 3 components. We beat ourselves up. We may look at others negatively, like she was beating herself up, she was looking at her boss negatively, and she was
Mhm.
judging COVID. And so when we work on that, and then her other sabotage got her to think of things differently, look at it from a different perspective using these sensing activities and tools so that she could interrupt
Mhm.
the pattern and come up with, okay, well, is it true? Is it true that that it's COVID? Well, no, it's not true. What is true? Right. And then and who would I be if I didn't have this? Right. So those kind of techniques that I would walk her through. And so she managed to change and she realized that the environment was really toxic. And
Mhm.
she had a side hustle, but she couldn't get the side hustle going as well because of
Mhm.
mental fitness, right? So we worked on the side hustle. So she left her full-time VP HR job as she got because she tripled her revenue in her side hustle. So she was able to leave her full-time job. And now even now we've become good friends. So we have coffee every now and then. So she's able to now, work in her business and her side hustle because she's developed the mental tools. And she always tells me, she says, there's one thing that stood out for me. She always says that It's not the problem. She always reminds herself that it's not the problem. The problem isn't the problem. The problem is in the thinking. And then she knows she has to make a decision about the problem, what she wants, so that she can develop the intention. Then she uses the sensing tools and activities I gave her to access her higher self. And then she decides what that one action is she can do today to really move herself and her business forward. So she still uses the tools today, but those are the things that kind of stood out to her.
Yeah, it really sounds like that shift allowed her to take bolder actions and ultimately leading to the growth in her business, which is so exciting and so it literally gave me chills when you said
Aw.
that. I'm just like, wow, it's so amazing. I know so many people who are right now working their side hustle along their full-time, corporate career and they're looking to get out and it's really all about what you just said, like her mental fitness. And, I'm sure that also played a part in, building her confidence and just changing her mindset towards failure. Cause I think ultimately that's what we're thinking, when we're making that transition to leaving the corporate world and moving into entrepreneurship. It's like, uh, what if this
Yeah, well,
doesn't
you've
work out?
experienced that yourself too, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure
Mhm.
you had clarity about what you wanted to do, and then you
Mhm.
developed, confidence, and then
Yes.
through developing this network that you have now, I'm sure that you get more courageous and more bold because I see you growing and evolving this group as well. So it's just wonderful the things that you are doing. So I see that as well. Yeah. Can you tell
Yeah.
us what was sort of what gave you clarity? What helped you shift from um, doing that transition from corporate to
Yeah.
entrepreneurship?
For me, it was, as soon as I became a mom, and it
Mm.
was actually my 2nd pregnancy was when I left ultimately, and it was during my mat leave that I took that time to not only just get used to being a mom, but I also, strategically made a plan to exit the corporate world, and I just yeah, after the 2nd pregnancy, there was the 1st, but just the way they treated me was just so awful. They don't care. They don't care that you're pregnant. Like, they didn't treat me nicely, and, that really gave me the fuel to say, "That's enough." I wanna live life on my own terms. I want to, um, do something that I'm really passionate about. Because I was working in insurance. I wasn't, like, super passionate about insurance or anything. It was good, it paid the bills, but, um, no, I was able to successfully do it and build my confidence during my mat leave, although that was also just a period of me just getting used to being a mom as well, like, just learning all the
Oh,
ins and outs.
yeah. What were some things that you used to change anything in your, let's say, in your mental sort of
Yeah, I did
capacity?
definitely get the help of a coach, when I first, launched my memberships, with the group, and I don't think I would have been able to do without because it's just you need that when you're just getting
Oh,
started, you just don't know what you're doing.
oh,
Like, is this
exactly.
right? Yeah.
Like it sounds like it was easy for me, but it really wasn't. Like it's I had to hire I hired coaches too, right? Like I
Mhm.
worked with, and I'm still working with Chris Duncan, but I worked with David Bayer, Brendan Burchard, like, all these coaches. Like I've spent thousands of dollars, but I couldn't, I tried to do it myself for years, years and years and years.
Mhm.
But when I
Yeah.
look back on it now, if I didn't know what I didn't know, right? We're kind of like that unconscious incompetent. We don't know what we don't know. But once you
Yeah.
hire your first coach and you realize, wow, like this is really helping me accelerate, right?
Yeah.
And as you, it's kind of like an onion. You probably noticed that too with your coaches. It's like an onion, right? You recognize that first layer, so you work on that to peel it back, and you go, wow. And then another layer appears, and it's like, oh, okay, so I'll work on this. But when you use the same tools, like I show my people to use the same tools to think it, change it, live it, it becomes easier to unravel and untangle and as we go on. So we work with the hardest one first, because when you
Mhm.
get success and those mature steps towards, it's really about, yeah, taking those small steps, which I'm sure you did too with your coach. You probably took it one step at a time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was one step at a time. I know I was so nervous to make that move because it is an investment in, a coach. It's not cheap. And, I talked to my husband about it. I said, "What do you think about me doing this?" And he's like, "I fully support it. I think you need to, just to get started." And I don't regret that decision, um, because it gave me that solid base that I needed to get started. And you know that you're
It
getting started on the right path.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you said investment, right? Because that's
Mhm,
what we do. We invest. It's not a cost. It's not spending money, not throwing money out the window. It's an investment because whatever money you spent, I'm sure you see how that's repaid itself. Hopefully
mhm.
3 times by now, right? Like that
Yep.
money that you spent, right? It's probably paid. It's worth
Yeah.
in gold by now. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a successful, profitable business and has been for I'm going on my uh 4th year now, like since getting my sole prop,
Yeah.
registration, what do you call it? And now I'm actually corporation, like I've moved into the corporation. So it's just baby steps, like you said, the onion. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
definitely, definitely.
And I'm
Okay,
glad you
so
mentioned it's taken you 4 years as well, because oftentimes, unfortunately, there's a lot of coaches out there that say, "Oh, I'll take you from 0 to 6 figures or 1,000,000," right? And it
oh,
really
yeah.
it takes time. You can't do it overnight. Yeah.
No, that's the thing. I feel like society is really just wants that, like, especially now that everything is so automated and you can just, press a button now and people just want the results. Like, you can't just go to the gym once, then look at yourself in the mirror and be like, "I'm done now."
Right? Yeah, or you
Yeah,
can't go to the gym for 3 months and say, "Okay, I'm good for the rest of my life." No, it's a habit. It's a lifestyle, right? It's
yeah,
developing that habit and lifestyle for the rest of your life, really. And then
yeah, totally.
expanding on it, right? Like lifting more weights, doing
Mhm.
different types of exercises, right? Doing different things to create that strength and endurance. It's the same with the mind, right? It's that continuous process. Yeah, I'm glad
It
you
is.
mentioned that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and, a lot of people just don't wanna do the work. You know why? It's boring. It could be boring, like, it's the boring work. The consistency, I think, like, is the most boring part about, whether you have a business or you're in the corporate world, everything is just you gotta be consistent in order to see those results. You can't just hire a coach and be like, "I got a coach, so now this is all done for me." Like, no.
You're right, you've gotta do the work. It's kinda like it's 4 stages that we go through, right? But, like, when we're learning something, like,
Mhm.
do your kids have shoelace they have to learn? Like, you're probably teaching them shoelaces? Do kids
Yeah,
still use yeah? I don't know
not yet,
about you,
actually,
but
they still have the Velcro, actually,
still have Velcro? Yeah, I
yeah.
remember my kids had when they had to but I remember myself and remembering my kids had to transition to using shoelaces.
Mhm,
But that's what I call we're unconscious incompetence. So we don't know what we don't know because I used to put the shoes on my kids, mom used to put my shoes on, right? So, you just sit there and you get your shoes put on. And then as you get older, you realize, no, 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 I want to do this myself. That's the same thing with mindset, right? I want to do this
mm,
myself. That's what coaches do. They help you figure out, okay, these are the shoelaces. That's what I help my
mhm.
clients do. Here's the shoelaces, right? Here's the lace, here's the shoelaces. This is what you do to tie your shoelaces. But as a kid, I don't know about you, but we used to get so frustrated. I used to actually have temper tantrums because I expected to be able to tie my shoe right away, right? So I was impatient. But my
Mhm.
mom taught me to have patience, that it takes time, patience, persistence, and
Yeah.
practice. She says you have to keep practicing and practicing and practicing. So that's what I teach my clients too, is and that's why people give up. Not because it's boring, but because it becomes uncomfortable, because they get frustrated, because they think it's not working, because they think, like you said, everything has to be automatic. You want that immediate gratification, like I did when I was learning, that I want to be able to do it all or nothing. I do it, and that's why we become conscious of what we don't know. So we develop that awareness and we start to think about it, like think about tying our shoes, but then we quit. So we go back to Velcro because it's easy, right? But if we want to move into becoming conscious, what I call conscious competent, that's where the change happens. So you actually start practicing and you practice and you persevere and you keep doing it so that you can move into what I call unconscious competent, right? It's like
Mhm.
driving a car. So now unconscious competent means that you're doing it automatically. It's now become a habit, just like driving a car, opening a door, using the doorknobs, tying your shoes. That's what I call the 4 stages that we go through. And like you mentioned, yeah, people get bored because, and part of the
Mhm.
boredom is because they're expecting, like you said, that it was instant or become uncomfortable. And they just label it as boredom. And then they fall back into their Velcro, right? Instead of using the shoelaces. So I hope that's a good
Yeah.
analogy.
Absolutely. I love it so much. And I would love to hear some more practical tips that you can offer our listeners to help improve their mental fitness. So like I know when we had our session together not too long ago, we were focusing on meditation. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So the practical steps are really what I call sensing, right? So with you, it was uh, sometimes people think meditation is like, you have no thoughts and, it's like whatever, you sit there with your legs crossed and your hands like, no, it could be
Yeah.
anywhere in the car, it could be in the grocery store lineup, anywhere you are, you can practice it. And it's really just sensing. When you come out of your mind and to slow
Mhm.
those thoughts down, it's really taking a moment to sense. And with you, what I walked you through is as we were breathing, it's getting to when you're breathing, you take that nice deep breath in. You can do it even while if you notice yourself with emotions bubbling up, like when you're in a networking call or
Mhm.
whether you're on a sales call or whatever, and you
Mhm.
notice you're getting anxious or stressed, you could just nobody's going to notice. Everybody has to take a breath. So you take a nice deep breath in, but the whole idea is that you sense the breath. So what I mean by that is you feel the rise of your chest and you're exhaling, you feel the fall of your chest. The other thing
Mm.
that you can do too in that moment, maybe you're in a meeting, board meeting or whatever, and you don't want to do the breathing. You breathe through your nose. You can sense the air going in through your nose. And
Mhm.
as it's going out of your nostrils, you'll feel that actually focus on the sensation of the air changing. Because as it goes in, it's cooler than when it comes out. It becomes warmer. So that's what I mean by meditation. Meditation is really slowing the thoughts down. And even while you're doing it, you may have thoughts like me because of my ADD. I may have thoughts popping in all the time, and that's okay. But I've
Mm.
learned to say, oh, there's a thought, let it go. And some days it's great. I may not have as many thoughts popping in. And then there's some days where it's like I get bombarded. But I've learned that doing these sensing practical steps, and that's what I call where you, um, part of interrupting the sabotage pattern and developing those sensing practices, then you can move into your higher self and say, okay, what is it that I need to do here? What's the best thing or what's the next action that I need to take? So
Mhm.
that's pretty much, um
I
and
love
it's really
that.
becoming aware of your thinking, really important to become aware of your thinking. What I call is
Yep.
think about your thinking. That's what I did too when I lost 80 pounds. I really started thinking about, okay, why am I going to the fridge at 9 o'clock at night to get a piece of cake? It's like, you know, I had to I had to kind of stop and start thinking about, oh, because I'm thinking about that call I had and how bad I felt because I didn't get sale. Oh, right. So you start
Mm.
becoming aware of your thinking and how you feel, right? I felt bad, but I could, because of, we learn as children to kind of push our feelings down. At least I did, right? And so then
Mhm.
you can take a different action. And then instead of opening a fridge door, I can stop, take a breath, think about my thinking, change the thinking, say, I don't need that right now, and walk away. So that's how I
Mhm.
lost 80 pounds, is I started to think it, change it, and live it.
Absolutely. We gotta challenge those negative thoughts and turn them into the positive affirmations, which takes a lot of work. It's not easy. Easier said than done. But that's where the
Well, I hope
meditation
I can make it easy and simple. It's just the work that sometimes seems a bit hard or arduous or whatever. But yeah, I try to make it a little simple and easy for people
Mhm.
to understand and do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where Liz comes in. I love it. I love it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the concept of the 80% mindset and 20% action. So, in your opinion, how does this concept apply to achieving success?
Absolutely. Well, it kind of goes back to what you mentioned, doing the work. So if you
Mhm,
do the work 80% of the time to focus your developing your mental capacity, then
mhm,
20% of the application in real life will pay off for you. It's because you've got to put the focus and the attention into it 80% of the time to get 20% of the actions working in your favor. So it's kind
mhm.
of like, how many times have you been to like maybe a Tony Robbins event or any other workshop, or a retreat where you go for like 2, 3 days and you get really excited and, you say, oh, when I start Monday morning, I'm going to change this. Have you ever done that?
Yeah, yeah.
And then what happens Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday?
Yeah,
Do
it
you
just doesn't
continue?
happen.
Right? It doesn't
Yeah,
happen
the
because
little
what
action
happens is
piece.
right, just a little. What happens is we just return to our old identity. We return to our old habits. Because,
Mhm,
we had 20% of the time during that weekend, we had all these insights, and maybe we were in action 20% of the time, but 80% of it is the mental habits that we need to form in order to get the
mhm.
results that we want in life.
Yes, yes. It's definitely, with back to achieving success, I think the concept really underlines the fact that it's more about how we think than what we do actually, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
80%. It requires creating that lasting positive change, 80% of the work to get 20% of the results that you want. So there's
I
3
love that.
things. It's kinda like the, saboteur assessment that I gave you, right?
Yeah.
You've got
Mhm,
these 10 negative, bandits in a way,
mhm,
destroying your mental positivity, and it's
mhm.
invading your mind, but you only have 1 fighter to fight these 10 guys off. But you really need 3 things. You need to think it, you need to change it, and then you need to live it to fight off. So it is a battle, right, in your
Mhm.
mind, the battle of the negative and positive. But what happens is eventually over time, you'll reduce the negativity and more positive. And it's just, there's don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with negativity. There's nothing wrong with negative because it comes back to, and you've probably heard this too, it comes back to, a long, long time ago. We still need to have that primitive part of our brain to let us know when we're in danger. And the
Mm,
problem is we tend to think that sending out an email is a threat.
mhm.
That no that we get in a sales call is a threat. Well, because we fear rejection. So that's what I help people too, is recognize that it's not a threat. You've got to give the mental tools and capacity to turn that around and look at it as a gift and an opportunity to grow and develop.
Yes, absolutely. I love that, and that's so great. And wanted to ask you for our, just for the last question here for this interview, for anyone who is maybe looking to, make a change in their life or their business, what would you say is the first step that you would recommend?
First step is to move yourself from the unconscious incompetent, where you don't know what you don't know, but you sort of sense something's wrong, and start
Mhm,
taking a not wrong, bad choice of words, that you sense that you want to change something, and move
mhm,
yourself to conscious incompetent. And what I mean by that is start becoming aware. But it's more than say, well, I'm aware I'm a perfectionist. Great.
mhm.
So what are you doing about it to change it? That's where I can come in to help you to change that. Because being a perfectionist, and we'll take a look at that, may not be as bad as you think it is. There's some area where you have to be a perfectionist, but there's some areas where if you're leading a team and you're a perfectionist, you're instilling a lot of maybe some things in your team, for example, your expectations and your standards may be too high and not allowing them to make mistakes and grow. So that's where I can come in. So it's really becoming aware. It's more than just becoming aware, it's actually becoming aware and becoming aware of that negative inner dialogue and sometimes the subtle ones that can hold you
Mhm.
back from connecting, being creative and curious about others. And so it's really going beyond that. And then again, it's like I mentioned earlier, and like what you have as well, is that patience,
Yes,
practice, and persistence with the
yes,
tools so that so that you can become conscious, competent, and you can move into unconscious competence so that you just do things easily with flow. You're taking bold, courageous action all the time.
exactly, and you mentioned perfectionism, and I think, like, I had somebody reach out to me saying that they pretty much were not good enough to join the professional women's meetup. Like, they were looking at the website and they said, "Oh, like, all these women look super successful, and I just don't think I'm there yet." And that made me really realize, like, success is not uh, a destination, it's a journey. We're constantly working on it, and you need to start small. You need to start and start small, right? Like the
Exactly.
weights. We talked about the weights, this is like start really small and work your way up.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
you've got that. Yeah.
Yeah. And like you said too, the mental fitness is so, so important. And if anybody watching here today really wants to work, on their mindset and just seeking a coach. The key is just start. And change starts with the
Exactly.
decision to try, right? We got to try
Exactly.
and we got to put in the work.
You
Yeah.
bet. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's sure, and the only reason it's uncomfortable is because you're just doing something different. You're not
Mm,
used to doing right? The comfort zone
that's
is
it.
doing the old habits, the bad things like going to the fridge, opening the door, and grabbing that cake. That's just a habit, right?
Mhm.
To be honest, it was uncomfortable for me to first stop and say, "I'm not gonna get that cake," because part of me is going, "Oh, one little bite's not gonna hurt," right?
Yeah.
So just
It
kind of being
starts
aware
there,
of that.
right?
Yeah,
It
it
starts
starts
there.
there. That's where it
Yeah.
starts, with the thinking.
Yep, yep. For me, it was the bags of chips at night. I love the bags of chips.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah. I buy them, but then, yeah, I'll just eat the whole bag, so it's better not to buy it. Yeah, I
I
have
know,
yeah,
they're so
I
good.
still have challenges with control sometimes, Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, Liz, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and insights with us today. You've made it super clear that mental fitness is not just something, it's we really need to have it in our lives. And for anyone who's just really looking to grow and to succeed in whether that be their business or their personal life. So, thanks again so much, Liz, for being my guest
Thank
today.
you.
Yeah,
And
and
thank
to our
you.
yeah, and is there anything else you wanted to, leave with our listeners today?
Oh, no, just, reach out. If you're curious about what it is I do, we can just have a brief conversation. If you want to find out what are those sabotage patterns, just reach out and, no obligation, it's free. I provide a little bit of a consult and it's up to you whether you wanna take it further or not. I'm very, I mean, I'm not,
Yeah.
I
No,
I
that was
just wanna
good.
help people.
I
Yeah.
had the chance to get that hour with you, and it was fantastic, and I highly recommend it for anyone who just would like to explore and to learn more about how your mind is your greatest asset. So, I think the most important thing is to train it well, right, Liz?
Exactly.
Yes. All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you for everyone who tuned in to the Professional Women's Meetup podcast. Until next time, keep thriving, keep growing, and remember, we're all in this together. Thank you so much, Liz. It was such an honor to have you here.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. All right.